Hey Tribe. In the previous video, I spoke about commitment to the process. And in this video, I want to talk about, the next step, and it's about working on the inner standing. Now, let me first start off by saying it's not an understanding. And let me explain the concept. There's a school of thought that believes that words are spells and that we actually speak out things about our lives and over our lives and into other people's lives and almost, speak things into existence. And if you break down certain words and terminology into from a different perspective, the concept of understanding could be perceived and processed as standing under the belief or the perspective of someone else. So if I understand what you are saying, I stand under your version of what you are saying. The concept of inner standing rather than understanding, and inner standing means, as I see it, that you take the concept or the words or the communication that you receive from people, from out into the world, whatever you read, you hear, who you engage with and interact with, and you are taking that and you are applying discernment. You are using your own frame of reference, logic, perception, gut feeling, all of those things, and you are processing it from your own perspective, values, frame of references and stuff, and you are then understanding the concept and making it your own. And I feel that's something that you need to understand, that you need to understand first before you go into what I'm trying to say here. So when you are in a position that you can understand what the concept means, then you need to start working on the understanding of everything that you are experiencing every single day. When we are embarking on this journey, we are going to be significantly triggered by our circumstances and by our realities. And although the objective and the aim is to get to a point that you are actually not triggered by anything and you are able to review everything that happens to us from a neutral place, we are going to be triggered by them. And the idea is that we need to be able to see these triggers and understand, rather say first. So we are going to experience life. And when we go through life, certain things may trigger us. What I mean by trigger, we might feel a certain emotion. We might feel judgment. We might feel anger. We might feel disappointment. All of these things that are based on the traumas that we've experienced in our lives. And that ultimately created a frame of reference, and based on that, we now view the world through our own personal lens or filter, whichever terminology we use. So looking at it from that perspective, we are going through life, and life will happen. Some things will be amazing, and it's great, but other things might trigger us, and it might bring up certain emotions, and therefore we are now going to react to them. The idea is, the objective is, of this specific time or this step is to be able to go and say, whoa, hang on, I'm being triggered by this situation or circumstance, and try and process this from an objective perspective. And that means we rather want to, instead of reacting to the trigger with our emotions, is be neutral in it and say, why are we being triggered by the circumstance? So we no longer respond to the individual or the situation that is triggering us, but we are able to be objective and neutral in that circumstance, but are able to process some form of discernment to say, wait, why are we being triggered? Why are these emotions and these responses coming up? And when you do this more often and you get into the practice, a lot of times it takes you to specific moments in time where you might firstly go and say, all right, I'm being triggered by this, and the feeling that comes up is rejection, or the feeling that comes up is an insecurity, or whatever the case is. I feel being taken advantage of, or whatever. And if you are able to understand that, you can unpack that and say, all right, where does this come from? And then it most likely takes you back to a moment in time in your life previously where something happened to you that created this trigger, this trauma, and we were not necessarily able to process it, release it, forgive. And because of that, we couldn't heal from it. And because of those traumas, it got stuck. And now we have these triggers that come into our lives that trigger these things. And you now need to be able to understand these realities. And if you can understand them, you are able to process them. You don't attach any emotion to it. There's no expectations or things to it. And the idea is to try and process this neutrally, or from a neutral perspective, so that you can understand them, hopefully process them, forgive or release them, and you can move on and you can start healing those parts of your shadow self. But you have to go there. You have to be able to go into those places and feel those emotions. And a lot of times we get angry and we respond and we don't even process why it's there. And we just go like, he's of this, she's of this, whatever. We get defensive, we get angry, we fight, we cry, or do whatever. And then we just kind of like put it aside, or it becomes a major thing. And then we kind of suppress it and we move on. So, and then you compound this day in, day out, relationships, family, work, bosses, colleagues, family members, all of that. You just keep on compiling all of that stuff, and we don't ever process them properly, and therefore we don't really get to a point that we can understand ourselves better and where those emotions and triggers come from. So you'll have to really apply a neutrality when you go there, and then you'll have to feel those emotions so that you can get a better idea of why they're there and what you need to work on a deeper level. And sometimes you'll have to open them up bit by bit and so on. And in my next video, I'm going to talk about healing the traumas, and we'll unpack that a bit more. So be strong, sending a lot of love, and just live.